Alright, so here's just an overview of stuff you might have learned throughout 1, 2 and Unit 3. What does it mean to link back to health status? Basically, it means you need to link back to one of the 9 indicators of health status, alright? And then what does it mean to link back to burden of disease? Well, it basically refers to YLL, years of life lost, YLD, years of life lost due to disability, or DALYs, disability adjusted life years. Alright, so that's a combination of YLL and YLD. So making sure that you remember this stuff because it carries throughout all of Unit 3 and 4. And what does it mean to link back to health outcomes? Well, basically it means you can link to either one of the 9 indicators or the 5 dimensions of health and well-being. Alright, and of course health and well-being, you have to link it to one of the 5 dimensions. Cool. So, what are the factors that contribute to differences in health status and burden of disease? The ones we focus on in HHD are poverty, inequality and discrimination, global distribution and marketing, safe water, and sanitation. Okay, and you can remember this using the acronym PIGS. Alright, so we're going to be having a look at all of these things and how it impacts on health status, specifically in throughout different countries. So what is poverty? Poverty is defined as the deprivation of basic resources. Okay, so it's not just money, it also includes food, water, clothing, adequate housing. And often it's considered to be a lack of money, but it is not just that. But money is usually the basis for all of these things. However, poverty is more than just that, more than just lacking money. It's all about not having enough food, not having enough water, not having clothing, not having adequate housing, right? So make sure that you have that reflected in your answers. And there are 2 types of poverty. We have relative poverty, right? So that's living on less than 50% of the country's average income. And then extreme poverty, which is living on less than $1.90 a day, okay? And it's not something that you need to know for HHD, like specifically that specific definition, but it's just something you shouldn't have in mind. So generally, low-income countries have more rates of people living in poverty than in high-income countries, all right? And that contributes to differences in health status and burden of disease. So, what is the impact of poverty on health status and burden of disease? There's going to be a lack of food because you're less able to afford food, and that increases the risk of malnutrition, leading to death from hunger, increasing your mortality rates. Then we have a lack of water, meaning weakening the immune system functioning, meaning they're more prone to infectious diseases, increasing your years of life lost due to disability or your morbidity. Then we have inadequate shelter, increasing the risk of contracting infectious diseases, right? Because when you're out in the open air, when you don't have enough shelter because you're poor, as a result of poverty, you're going to be more prone to airborne diseases like influenza because you're in the open air. And then you link it to the health status indicator of prevalence of a specific infectious disease. A lack of healthcare in low-income countries due to poverty means many preventable conditions will go undiagnosed, alright? So for example, simple infectious diseases won't be diagnosed, won't be treated, and that increases your morbidity rates. And then a lack of education. Many people do not understand the risks of drinking contaminated water. Increased incidence of waterborne diseases such as dysentery results as a result of not understanding the risk of drinking contaminated water. Alright, so these are the general things: lack of food, lack of water, shelter, healthcare, and education caused by poverty. Okay, that generally leads to lower health status and burden of disease in low and middle income countries. Then our next factor is safe water. Alright, so safe water basically refers to water free from contaminants and disease-causing bacteria and chemicals such as lead and mercury. Alright, so you generally do need to know the definition, not word for word, but just general ideas of the definition. So access to safe water means that people have access to a water source that is clean and able to be used for drinking, crops, and livestock. So people have ready access to it and don't need to spend time collecting it. This task, unfortunately, falls to women and children in low-income countries. So they're going to be more impacted by having less access to safe water, so something to keep in mind when we're talking about impact on health status. And keep in mind that low-income countries generally have less access to safe water than in high-income countries. So, if you were to ask, if you're asked a question, describe the impact of a lack of safe water on health status and burden of disease and how it contributes to differences, you could say a lack of water can diminish the natural environment, making it difficult to grow crops, right? And that reduces your food security, leading to hunger and malnutrition, meaning there's going to be high levels of morbidity due to malnutrition. And then if unsafe water is consumed, that increases the risk of waterborne diseases like cholera, malaria, typhoid, increasing your YLLs. And then a lack of access to clean water in close proximity means that people might have to carry heavy loads for long distances, specifically generally women and children. That increases musculoskeletal conditions such as arthritis, which is very painful, increasing your YLDs. Because you're not living healthy for that long, you're going to be living in pain for a long, long time. Alright, and then our next factor is sanitation. Sanitation refers to the safe disposal of human urine and feces, as well as the maintenance of hygienic conditions. Okay, so through garbage collection and the disposal of wastewater. And then primarily it relates to infrastructure. Okay, so this definition is actually really important because a lot of people get safe water and sanitation just a bit mixed up. So keep in mind the specifics of it being the disposal of human waste, not just making sure the environment is clean. It also relates to removing human waste safely. So an examples of sanitation includes a public provision of clean drinking water through infrastructure like taps, adequate sewage disposal, waste removal from the streets, so your garbage collections, and generally sanitation is less available in low-income countries than in high-income countries, leading to differences in health status and burden of disease. So as a result of a lack of sanitation, there's going to be no functioning waste disposal, meaning poor air quality, right? And that increases the risk of airborne diseases like your bronchitis and respiratory diseases like asthma, and that increases your YLDs. Then also having unsanitary conditions creates breeding grounds for mosquitoes, and that increases the risk of malaria because mosquitoes carry malaria and they thrive in moist conditions, decreases life expectancy. A lack of a sewage system can increase the risk of waterborne diseases like cholera. That is a disease causing severe hydration and diarrhea, and that increases your dailies. And then a lack of segregated toilets at school for human urine and waste. Girls might have to go to a public toilet during night or might not be able to go to school at all, and that increases the YLDs due to mental health conditions like anxiety, because you're afraid of being attacked at night. So here is the key difference between safe water and sanitation. This is usually a 2-marker question. So 1 mark is for the definition or description of safe water. Then you have to include a comparative word anytime it asks for the difference. Okay, so very, very common SAC question. So make sure you have like while or whereas in between the 2 definitions. And then the 2nd mark is for the definition of sanitation. If you do have both the descriptions but you don't have the comparative word, you're not going to get all the marks. Alright, so make sure that you include the comparative word of like whilst or whereas or however in between those 2 definitions. So for example, safe water refers to water free from contaminants and disease-causing bacteria and chemicals, whilst sanitation refers to the safe disposal of human urine and feces, as well as the maintenance of hygienic conditions through garbage collection and disposal of wastewater. Alright, so you need to make sure you have that comparative word in between them. And it's definitely worth having this sort of answer memorized, not just word for word, but like really understanding how to answer this question, as it's a really, really common SAC question. So, what is inequality and discrimination? That is our next factor from the acronym PICS. Inequality is the state of not being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. And then discrimination is the treating someone differently as a result of their personal characteristics. So your age, ethnicity, religion, etc. And this can involve the unjust treatment and violation of rights. And those are very, very, very key words. So generally, low-income countries have more rates of inequality and discrimination than in high-income countries, contributing to differences in health status. So, the subcategories of inequality and discrimination are race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity. Alright? And it's really important that you remember that sex is a biological trait associated with males and females. Sexual orientation is about who a person is attracted to, and then gender identity is how a person identifies and expresses themselves to be. So, as a result of racial discrimination, you can be socially excluded, leading to mental health conditions, be attacked, have physical violence, causing injuries, be refused job opportunities, leading to poverty, and refused access to healthcare. Alright, meaning there's going to be more infectious diseases and things due to being refused access to healthcare. And that's also the same for religious discrimination. As a result of sexual discrimination, there's going to be reduced access to schooling for many girls and women, leading to lower health literacy and reduced likelihood of having their children vaccinated or having, safe birth practices, etc. There's going to be more risk of child marriage, children being forced to marry men that are much, much older, leading to physical violence and stress. Teenage pregnancies as a result of discrimination. We have many women and girls being tasked with going to collect water, which leads to musculoskeletal conditions. And then girls and women being forced into laborious industries, alright, like prostitution, and increasing your risk of STDs and STIs. And then, as a result of discrimination against LGBTQIA+ individuals, there's going to be social exclusion, physical violence again, refused job opportunities, and refused access to healthcare. Alright, so it's really important that you understand these 5 different subcategories and as the impact on health status and burden of disease. And then we also have global distribution and marketing, alright? So this one is a bit less straightforward, but once you get the hang of it, it makes much more sense. So global distribution refers to the transfer of goods and services from one country to another, okay? And it's led to a much more interconnected world. And global marketing refers to the advertising and selling of goods and services from one country to another. And manufacturers in high-income countries sell their brands of tobacco to middle and low-income countries. And that might seem a bit confusing, but it's actually due to low and middle-income countries having much, much less regulations than high-income countries do. So this is more of a recent thing. Back in the day, it was much more targeted to high-income countries, whereas now, because high-income countries have lots of laws, middle and low-income countries are being targeted for their marketing. Okay, so the categories that we're going to be looking at are tobacco. Okay, so that's the nicotine-rich leaves used for smoking or chewing, alcohol, which is, alcohol, and processed foods. Okay, so when the raw food ingredients are transformed into marketable food products that can be easily prepared and served by the customer. So it's not made from scratch, it's not made in a fresh way, it's not made using low levels of salt or sugar. It's really made to be as tasty and as efficient as possible, which obviously can lead to lots of health impacts. So, why are low-income countries targeted for tobacco sales? Because there's no underage law restrictions in many of the countries, no sale tax, no passive smoking bans, right? You can smoke anywhere you want. No marketing bans, you can market to kids and anything if you want. You can enable the sale of individual cigarettes, and there's no plain packaging laws, right? Whereas in Australia, you're going to have lots of these the cigarette packets having really graphic images of lung cancers and things like that to deter smokers from smoking. So what are the impacts on health status, right? As a result of, more people smoking tobacco, you can have carcinogens in your body which can lead to cancerous tumours and things like lung cancer, which is very deadly. A weakened immune system, leading to infectious diseases, and if pregnant women are smoking, maternal smoking can lead to a low birth weight and huge risks of many diseases, from your mental conditions, like anxiety and depression, to things like CVD and heart attacks and things like that later on in life. Alright, so it's very negatively impacting people all around the world. Then as a result of low-income countries are targeted for alcohol marketing because of their lack of health literacy, lack of underage laws, lack of sale tax, no marketing bans, and the lack of health promotion generally. And as a result of it, there's going to be scarring of liver tissue caused by lots and lots of alcohol consumption, right? Because people are less aware that, excessive alcohol consumption can lead to scarring of liver tissue and cirrhosis. There's going to be risk-taking behaviors, right? Like drink driving, more accidents and things like that, more violence as a result of drunken violence. Maternal drinking can lead to infant FASD, which is a specific developmental disorder in which the facial and body development is completely altered. And then CBD and type 2 diabetes. Alright, so really, really important things and really, really sad things, which as a result of alcohol consumption being excessive can impact health status. And low-income countries are targeted for processed foods because of the lack of health literacy, health promotion, food labelling legislation. In Australia, we have very, very strict food labelling legislation. We even introduced the recent five-star rating thing, health star rating thing, which we looked at in Unit 3 of Study 2. There's a lack of sale taxes and increased urbanization. All right, we're going to have more urban environments, more working culture where people want to be eating quick food, unhealthy food, whatever's easiest to access. As a result, there's going to be high intake of sugar, high intake of fat, high intake of salt, which can lead to type 2 diabetes, CVD, cancers, hypertension, so many different things. Okay, so really, really nasty stuff as a result of high-income corporations wanting to make more money and targeting low and middle-income countries which haven't really had those laws in place yet. Alright, so we've got a question from last year's paper. So according to the WHO, more than 80% of the world's 1.3 billion tobacco users live in low and middle-income countries. So what are 2 reasons? You need to identify them. Why manufacturers of tobacco might be marketing at low and middle-income countries. Alright, so I'm going to give you a minute to just think about that. Alright, if you haven't already guessed, it's actually due to tobacco profits falling in high-income countries. There are fewer laws in these countries. For example, you need to make a specific example like low tax on tobacco, fewer restrictions on where people can smoke, and there's lower levels of education in these countries, alright? Because governments of low and middle income countries have been slower to adopt measures to slow tobacco uptake. Alright, so if you reference literally any of these specific reasons, you would have gotten 2 marks, alright? If you had 2 descriptions of these, you would have gotten the 2 mark. Alrighty.